What's up guys? Today I want to talk to you a little bit about shadow boxing. And if you're new to the channel, we're talking boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, any striking sport where you might implement shadow work. We're going to talk about its benefits. We're going to talk about the right ways to do it. And really what I want to do is I want to give you three big tips or three things to start implementing into your shadow boxing to get more out of it. Now, the beauty of shadow boxing is you can do it anywhere. It doesn't require any equipment. It doesn't actually require a huge amount of space, and it allows you to practice your technique, get a workout in, and do some other things that we're going to talk about in this video without the need for even going to your gym. The reason I want to talk about it is I believe that a lot of people use shadow boxing really inefficiently. Very similar to people who just go to the gym to lift weights. When I see people shadow boxing who don't really know what they're doing, they tend to just go from one technique to another or one concept to another, and there's clearly no real form or rhyme or reason to what they're doing in their shadow boxing routine. So for today's video, I want to give you three things you can implement to get more out of your shadow work. Number one, have a plan. This is by far the most common mistake I see people doing with shadow boxing, is they just seem to jump in it with no real plan for what they're trying to get out of it. And by a plan, I mean, how are you going to use it? How long are you going to use it for? And what is the objective of the session? Now listen, if you just use it as a warm-up, then this is fine. Put on a couple of timers, set a few rounds up, do it for 5 to 10 minutes, get yourself warmed up, and then move on with whatever else you got planned for the session. But if you're going to build a workout around your shadow boxing, or you're going to spend a significant amount of time on it, then I really think you need to structure the workout in advance of doing it. And in all fairness, the advice I'm going to give you now would also apply if you were doing a bag work session, a pad work session, and even a sparring session. Here's a couple of questions that you can ask yourself when you're trying to plan your workouts. What is the overall focus of the training session? Is it to develop your cardio? Is it to work on some specific techniques? Is it to run over some strategies and tactics for a specific opponent? How long are you going to do it for? Is it a 10-minute workout, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? How long is your total time that you plan to spend on it? Now, with that in mind, you can work out how many rounds you're going to do, how long are the rounds going to be, and how much rest time are you going to put in between. You can also consider things such as warning timers. So sometimes, for example, I'll put a warning timer on for the last 10 seconds of the round to ensure that for those last 10 seconds, I push it a little bit harder and try to build in that pretense that towards the end of the round, I want to put a stamp on it. You can also use a warning timer to let you know when the halfway point is there. So for example, if you like to work from a switch stance, maybe you do half the round in orthodox, half the round as a southpaw. And finally, ask yourself what is going to be the specific focus of each round. This is going back to what I was saying at the start about people just randomly moving from one technique or one concept or one focus to the other. Let's go through an example. Let's say that you're going to do a pure boxing, shadow boxing workout. You might spend round one just working on footwork, just working on foot placement, moving forward, backwards, cutting angles, creating space. You might do round two as a defensive round, practicing raising and moving your guard, head movement side to side, bopping and weaving, rolling under shots, creating angles in order to get out of the way. Then round three, let's say you do a round purely focused on your jab. Different ways of throwing it, doubling up on it, shooting it to the body, throwing it with speed, throwing it with power, trying to ensure that you're keeping a good stance, that you're keeping your guard up with your rear arm, and etc, etc, etc. You get the idea. You start developing an idea of how the rounds are going to progress, and again, that's purely going to depend on what you decided is going to be the focus for that training session. So have a plan, guys. Whatever that means for you, have a plan. Structure your training the same way that you would be expected to if you were going to lift weights. You're going to do bench press, you're going to do some chest flies, maybe you're going to do some dips, but you've got these exercises planned out before you step into the workout room. Number two, visualization. This is a really imperative and important thing to include when you're working things like shadow boxing. One of the big drawbacks of shadow boxing is that you don't get any feedback. You're not hitting a bag and seeing how it swings or getting a sense for your power or even your speed. It's not pad work with a partner. It's not sparring with someone who's throwing things back at you. You are purely working on your own in your own space. So your imagination needs to play a part. It needs to play a role to help make this translate into your training later on. Take for example, throwing a 1-2, throwing a jab cross. If you just throw your jab cross when you're shadowboxing with no real visualization going on, then at best, I guess you're practicing the technique. But really what you want to be doing is imagining how that's going to land on your opponent's face, and even going through different scenarios. You hit clean with both. The jab gets blocked, but the cross gets through. The jab hits, but the cross gets parried. You start setting up all these different situations and playing them through in your mind. That way, when it moves into sparring or it moves into a competition, you've already seen it. You already know what to do if they get blocked. You already know what to follow up with if your opponent starts pushing forward onto you, because you've played it out in your mind and you've played out the routine of it in the shadowboxing. Now obviously there's no guarantees, you can never truly predict what's going to happen in a fight. It's very different when there's actually someone in front of you throwing punches at you, but it's a really important place to get started. And for those of you that struggle with sparring confidence, it's a great way to build it, because if you never feel like you can hit people in actual sparring, a great place to start is to at least be able to imagine yourself being able to hit people. At least have it in your mind's eye that you know what it would look like or feel like or sense to be like to hit someone with your jab. And if you can imagine that and work on that, and then of course keep implementing it in bag work, pad work, keep practicing it in sparring, it can only help to give you a higher success rate. Now let's say you're in a training camp and you're preparing for a specific opponent. Maybe you've watched some tape, maybe your coach has studied their tendencies, and you can start again going through routines that apply to that person. Start visualizing the stance they stand in, how much forward pressure they apply, what angles they use, what openings do they do, what is that punch they throw that leaves their chin exposed, what is that shot they throw that opens up their body, and what combinations can you be working and practice that are going to take advantage of that. Visualization, guys, it's a really useful and powerful tool. Many of the greatest fighters in loads of different disciplines talk about their use of it all the time. All right, and number 3, train in front of a mirror or film yourself. Now, if you're fortunate enough to be training with a coach, hopefully they're walking around and they're making little micro adjustments when they feel they need to, telling you where you're dropping your guard, telling you that you're not extending your punch enough, that you're not rotating the shoulders, that you're not pivoting the feet. They're there to be the mirror for you and to provide the feedback. But often, if you're working shadowboxing, you might be doing it alone, and it's a great place to catch yourself with your own tendencies. From years and years of coaching, one thing I can tell you for sure is most people are completely blissfully unaware of what they're doing wrong, even if they're completely conscious of what is wrong. So for example, the majority of people know that you got to fully extend your arm when you throw across so that you can take advantage of your reach. Throw it as long as you can, obviously without overextending yourself, but we want to straighten out that arm and retract it back when we throw it. But you'd be amazed how many people do what's often called a rabbit punch, where they're only halfway extending their arm. They're not feeling it or sensing it, and of course, they're often not seeing it. So training in front of a mirror or filming yourself for later reference is a great way of being able to personally assess your technique, your footwork, your guard placement, and to start making small adjustments. Now, of course, a mirror is the classic one. The one thing I'll say about a mirror is, of course, it needs to be big enough and you need to have space to look at it, but also you need to be able to look at the mirror, which means that you're generally facing directly towards it. The issue is that you're then only viewing yourself from that one dimension and you're going to be missing a lot of things. So I really do recommend going the filming route. Set up a camera or set up your phone and film yourself for a few rounds so that you can review it later. Now, if you don't feel qualified to review your own footage, if you really just don't know what you're looking at, maybe you're a complete beginner or you're quite advanced and it's like these little nuanced details, the beauty of having it filmed is you can take it to a coach or you can take it to a trusted training partner and have them assess it. Get that third eye to look at it at a time that's convenient for both them and for you. The beauty of the camera, of course, is that you can set it up at any angle, you can set it up in any position, and you can move around it without worrying about the direction you're facing, which means that you get to see yourself from all dimensions. What it looks like from the side, from the back, from the front, from an angle, and you get to kind of correct little things that you might not be able to catch looking directly at the mirror. So there we have it, guys. I started this video video primarily talking about shadow boxing, but as I did mention, this really does all apply to you doing bag work, pad work, Dutch drills, anything that's a progressional step towards sparring and eventually competition. These are some great bits of advice to start implementing into your training to get more out of it. Guys, if you found the video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you just hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel. We've got new videos coming out every week, and I will see you on the next one.